G'day everybody. Just a little update as far as Paula wanting to do some clarification. Now, Paula sent me this and just has asked me to put this up so everybody is on the same page as her. Okay, and this is just a picture, and I'll put it up here for people to look at while I'm saying it. And this is basically when she's saying it's an anagram, or just when she's using the word rapist or raped, this is what she's actually meaning. Now, as far as rapist is concerned, it is repeated attacks on personal and intellectual safety causing terror. Okay, that is what rapist means to her. So when she's saying calling someone a rapist, that's what she's feeling. And as far as being raped is concerned, that is repeated attacks on personal and emotional development. Alright, so when she's saying these words, that is what she's meaning from them, because we don't want people getting the incorrect interpretation of what she's meaning. And I've told Paula I'm none too happy at all just to go ahead and throw this up for you, because that's what I do. Now, one other thing she brought up while I was talking to her recently was that during the whole COVID rubbish, she was actually held in hospital against her will for 3 days over a long weekend. One, because there was no staff in the hospital to look after her in that ward, but what she actually did was record the nurse. Now, Paula simply, as most people that actually understand the law know, that she wanted to know if she was being detained.
A written policy of what you're holding me here against my will under. Probably a new policy, is it, under this COVID crap? Seems to be a lot of new policies with taking away our human rights. Am I like legally detained?
No.
But I'm not allowed to leave?
Well, at this point, because of the law, you could be, I know it's unlikely that you have it.
No, I'm not asking that. So am I being detained? No. Am I allowed to leave?
No.
So if I'm not being detained, then why aren't I allowed to leave?
Well, am I able to just chat to the doctors and then I can come back and tell?
She'd been put in a hospital ward, suspected of COVID, which she never had, and she was basically told she can't leave for 3 days. So she tried to figure out if she was detained. The nurse said no, and then she said, so I can leave then? The nurse says no. So just a few things that what that nurse is actually breaching on. Now, first of all, there's section 9 of the Bill of Rights, which is the right not to be subject to torture or cruel treatment. I think putting someone in a room for 3 days without any food or water and that sort of jazz is somewhat cruel treatment. There's section 10 of the Bill of Rights, where you have the right not to be subject to medical or scientific experimentation. Well, that's what they're doing with everybody at the moment. They're guinea pigging them. Yeah, scientific experimentation. Well, you're going to be getting that when the old COVID virus vaccine comes out, doesn't it? I mean, they've got no track history, no records of any safety tests for this because they're not done. So there's that right as well that was breached. And of course there's another classic here. There's section 11, which is the right to refuse to undergo medical treatment, which I'm sure she was quite happy to do and exercise. There's also, a no-brainer here, section 18, freedom of movement. She was told she wasn't able to leave, so they were infringing and breaching her rights of freedom of movement by doing what they did. There's also section 22, liberty of the person. Everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily arrested or detained. Now, the reason I'm emphasising detained here is something everybody should take into account. When you are stopped by a police officer, you are detained. When you are stopped on a roadside check, you are detained. And what's the very first thing if you are arrested or detained that should be happening, and never does? You are not Mirandized. So you sit there and you try and talk your way out of it, and that's all going to get held against you. Even though you're not Mirandized, the most problem that people have when they are pulled over by a police officer is they open their fucking mouth. You don't talk to them because anything said will be held against you. They're not telling you this, but that's bad police training. Every officer that detains or stops anybody for any fucking reason, the first words out of their mouth should be Mirandizing them, so they know the conversation they're about to have can be held against them. Okay? And that is section 23 of the Bill of Rights. I'll read this out to you. The right of a person arrested or detained. Everyone who is arrested or who is detained under any enactment, alright, shall be informed at the time of the arrest or detention of the reason for it, and B, shall have the right to consult and instruct a lawyer without delay and to be informed of that right. Are you told that when you're stopped at a checkpoint? I don't think so. And C, shall have the right to have the validity of the arrest or detention determined without delay by way of habeas corpus, and to be released if the arrest or detention is not lawful. Kind of like getting stopped on the sidewalk for 20 minutes because you're filming a police station. I wasn't read my rights when I was detained, now was I? And something to note, people, you have 6 years to file a private civil or criminal suit against anyone that has wronged you. So get into the High Court. Start filing civil suits against these officers. If you're going to file it against the Crown, you name the Attorney General as the first defendant, and then the names of the muppets that are doing this shit underneath is the co-defendants, or second and third and fourth, and so on. Costs $200 to file it, and yeah, as long as you do it right. And I've actually spoken to a gentleman today who's currently doing the exact thing. So we'll see how that goes. There are case law in the work, people, and these guys aren't settling for any money because it is not about money. It is about the principle of the matter. These guys are supposed to do the job and act within the law, and they're not doing it. Okay? And there's also section 24, which is a personal favourite of mine. Say for Paula, when she gets issued a court summons from 4 police officers that don't know how to use a mailbox, when she's being issued summons, usually a charging document, for it to be valid, should have provisions on it. You know, Section 40, Section 133 of the Land Transport Act 1998, Road User Rules 5.1, that's if you've been speeding. You know, those provisions have to be on the charging document, because that is how you are being fully and fairly informed of the cause and nature of the proceedings against you. Their little pretty description in that you drove a motor vehicle exceeding blah blah blah, that's just a description. But for an offence to be created, it is created upon a filing of a charging document with provisions on it. If the provisions aren't on a charging document, that's fraud upon the court, an invalid charging document. You've got to remember these things, people, and you're not being informed. Paula's summons had no CRN number, so there's no charge. She called the court, there's no charge to answer. But she's still going to show up, just in case they stick a warrant out for her arrest. She's not been informed of why. It says something about offensive language on a telephone, but she's not been informed of what section of what act that is. And, you know, police prosecution services, people like Heath Carlson, need to start doing their job right, don't you, Heath? So section 24, rights of persons charged. Everyone who is charged with an offence. Okay, this is minimum standards of criminal procedure. And yes, these things are criminal procedures. Whether they're summary offences or not, they're still category 1, 2, 3, 4 criminal charges. A, shall be informed promptly and in detail of the nature and cause of the charge. Well, if you're not being given the provisions, you're not being told the legal reasons why you've been charged, or allegedly. B, shall be released on reasonable terms and conditions unless there is just cause for continued detention. And C, shall have the right to consult and instruct a lawyer. And D, shall have the right to adequate time to and facilities to prepare a defence. That's what Arthur likes to use when he's in jail. He's got to have everything he needs to conduct a proper defence. E, shall have the right, except in the case of an offence under military law, trialled before a military tribunal, like that has anything to do with most people. And it says here, for the benefit of a trial by jury when the penalty for that offence is or includes imprisonment for 2 years or more. So if you're being charged with a criminal offence that the penalty is going to be 2 years, or say 7 years for perjury, or 14 years for misleading, listen up, police officers, for those sorts of charges, then you have the right to a jury trial. So, always go for the jury trial if you can. F, shall have the right to receive legal assistance without cost if the interests of justice so require and the person does not have sufficient means to provide for that assistance. And of course, that's the other big hang-up, legal aid. No lawyers like to do things under legal aid because they get paid peanuts when they can charge far more when they're doing their normal shit and not doing things under legal aid. And this, in the interests of justice, is a very open term. Legal aid can just decide what's in the interests of justice and what isn't, quite frankly, and shaft those people that need help but don't get it. G, shall have the right to have the free assistance of an interpreter if the person cannot understand or speak the language used in court. So they're talking about legalese. That's what the lawyer's there for. They're the people that are supposed to interpret the legalese or legislature into English so the normal layperson or common man or woman can comprehend what's going on. That's the only point a lawyer's there for, is supposed to interpret. Of course, every lawyer's first duty is to the court, so that you're going in there with a stacked pack already against you. So, yeah, there's something to be said for being your own self-representing lay litigant, or self-representing litigant, and it takes a lot to learn. But shit, if I can do it, anybody can. I'm not exactly the smartest or brightest spark plug out there, but I have a really good memory for taking in numbers and sections. That's the only reason I seem to be having any fun. And I do have fun doing this. After all, if you're not enjoying it, why bloody do it? So yeah, there's nothing more satisfying than using their rules on their court and beating them at their own game. You can lean forward over to the prosecutor and try and shake their hand and say good game at the end of it. Generally, they don't really take that nicely. Anyway, just that little pull up there with Paula. Sorry for the little extra rant, but people need to know this stuff, and it's simple and basic. But yeah, every single person that gets stopped by a police officer is detained. And it's not just if you're arrested you should be Mirandized, it's if you're detained. So anyone that a cop detains should be given their Miranda rights without delay. Doesn't happen. So there you go, people. You can get shit thrown out because you haven't been Mirandized. Or, like in Paula's case when she was arrested for so-called obstruction, Caleb, in his little formal statements, word verbatim writes down that he read her rights. This was between sticking her in the handcuffs and then leading her over with her arms shoved up behind her back, causing her pain, walking her to the car. He supposedly said all of that. Like fuck he did. So right there in a formal statement, he's lying his ass off. But that's just my opinion. People can watch the videotape and assess it for themselves. But if you're going to be read your rights, you would expect Paula to turn around and say something like, no, I don't understand, I'm confused, what are you talking about? But she's not. She's busy screaming in agony because he keeps leaning into the car and squeezing the cuffs more, causing her more torture. Evil, evil, evil. And what's with this driving with one hand doing 150 selfie filming himself? You know, those laws can be skipped if it's in the course of their duties, but there was no cause for that. It's kind of handy. Shows he hasn't been headbutted. Shows that fucking Paula's not buckled in properly. Shows that he's being a complete idiot with his lights and sirens on when he's only transporting a prisoner. And where's the female officer? You've just been accused of sexual assault. What the fuck are you doing in a car alone with her? These things need to be brought up. Sorry, enough of my rant. Bye now.